It's a bit of a tough time in tech, with seemingly every company out there removing job postings and laying off people. You may find yourself in the position now where you're trying to get a job and you're sending your resume out to tons of companies, but no one's even giving you an initial interview. In this video, we'll be talking about some approaches to try and change that and hopefully, eventually, land you a job. As far as my qualifications go, I've been working in tech for about a decade now as both a software engineer and a software engineering manager. I've reviewed thousands, if not tens of thousands, of job applications and resumes and have interviewed hundreds of job candidates. I've also been on the flip side of that. I've applied to many jobs as a candidate and I've gotten interviews where I wouldn't necessarily have expected to get those interviews based on my resume and the job qualifications they were asking for. Great, so let's start with one of the most common problems that I've seen: the companies we're applying to. Let's list out the companies off the top of my head that I might think of applying to. Google, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Microsoft, Uber, DoorDash. Okay, so most of these companies have hiring freezes going on right now and maybe even some layoffs, so those probably aren't the best to apply to right now. So now what? I know, let's go on LinkedIn or Twitter and we'll find some list of companies that are currently hiring right now. Awesome. It looks like someone compiled this super long Google sheet of companies that are hiring right now. I'll apply to all of them and wait. And wait some more. And some more. It's been a few weeks now. Did they get my application? What's going on here? Let's rewind back to when tech was booming. What were those companies that everyone wanted to apply to? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, commonly referred to as FAANG. Even back then, getting into any of those companies was hard, even though tech was booming. Just based on the percentage of applicants who got jobs, getting into any one of these companies was harder than getting into Harvard. Being, super explicit about what that means, let's say there was one job position open and 1,000 applicants. That means that out of those 1,000 people, 999 of them will not get the job because only one person can. And they'll have to look elsewhere. That's a lot of competition, and the odds aren't exactly in anyone's favor here. So let's say you recognize, okay, maybe I'll get a job at one of these small, highly selective companies, but maybe I shouldn't completely rely on that. All right, then, I'll apply to some other companies that I've heard of, but maybe aren't as selective as those FAANG companies, let's say an Intuit or Workday. And hopefully one of those will give me an interview and subsequently I'll be able to land a job. In all likelihood, that very well may have worked because the demand for software engineers was so high and the number of people qualified to be software engineers was quite low in comparison. Now it seems like this isn't working anymore, so let's dig a little into why and what we can do about it. A lot of those big employers like FAANG aren't hiring anymore, right? So what happens to all those people who were getting jobs there? Well, if you and I could easily find that list of companies that are still hiring, so could these tens of thousands of other people, and they'll go ahead and apply to those same jobs. Effectively, those companies on these lists are the new FAANG. Sure, maybe these companies aren't household names, but in terms of competitiveness, these companies are now the ones that are as hard or harder to get into than Harvard. So, does this mean we're out of luck? I don't think so. So much of our attention and focus goes to these high-profile and large companies. But these companies are the outliers. In the US, literally 99.9% of companies are small businesses, where a small business is defined as a business having fewer than 500 employees. As comparison points, let's go through some of the sizes of the tech companies that we're currently applying to and aren't as big or famous as the FAANG companies. Cruise, a self-driving car company, had about 1,800 employees as of 2020, and it's probably gone up since then. Lime, which makes rentable electric bikes and scooters, has around 800 employees as of 2020. Plaid, which provides a financial technology platform, has around 1,200 employees. Brex, which makes corporate credit cards and cash management accounts, is about a similar size to Plaid, around 1,150 if I remember correctly. All of these, are smaller companies than FAANG companies, but they're still in the top 0.1% based on size. They're not included in the literal 99.9% of all the other companies that are out there. Maybe you'll find some of this, 99.9% group on a list of companies that are still hiring. But the vast majority of them aren't going to be on these lists. I mean, again, 99.9%, it's a really big number. The vast majority, actually, of companies that are in this group are going to be companies that you and I have literally never heard of. Frankly, that's a good thing. Most of these smaller companies don't have that many people applying, even today, because no one knows that they exist. That means when we find these companies and apply, there's way less competition, and that dramatically increases the odds that we will land our first interview and then eventually get a job. As an example, at the first startup I ever worked at as a full-time employee, I was the 6th person hired. I was hired as an Android engineer, and they had been trying to hire someone for the position for literally over a year. When I applied, I'm not sure there was even a single other applicant besides me. So how do you find these companies? Well, you have to get a bit creative. One tactic that I've used in the past is searching for venture capital companies, both big and small ones, and seeing the list of companies that they've given money to. These companies are generally listed on the VC's website or easily findable with a quick Google search. There are tons and tons of VC firms out there, and this strategy alone will probably find you more companies than you'll know what to do with. You can also search for pretty localized companies, and by that I mean searching based on location. A lot of people out there are searching for companies, based in San Francisco or New York City, but how many people are searching for companies based out of Oakland, California, or Jersey City, New Jersey, Tampa, Florida, or wherever your hometown is, honestly? Okay, so that tackles the problem area of finding companies to even apply to. The next hurdle is now actually submitting a successful application. And by successful, I mean one that gets you your first interview. Let's walk through what we might currently be doing. We found a job posting at a company we like. We fill in the basic info like name, email, am I authorized to work here, here's my resume, and we scroll down and we hit submit and we're done, right? Well, how many times have you done this and then never heard back, even if you thought you were qualified? I'm guessing it's not a low number. The fix here is maybe something you're not quite expecting, and it's something you probably skipped over as you were submitting your job application. That's a cover letter. Now, I get what you're probably thinking. Vishal, no one writes cover letters anymore. They're old, they're stiff, they're boring, they're time-consuming. And I totally hear you. In sort of the traditional way that cover letters have functioned, they're essentially a formality. A job asks for a cover letter because that's the way things have always been done, and a candidate writes the cover letter because that's what's expected of them. The resulting cover letter will probably be a generic letter restating most of what's on your resume and having some commonly known information about the company that the recruiter has probably heard a million times already. I wouldn't fault anyone for feeling like this is a bit of a waste of time, because it is. This isn't the type of cover letter that I think should be written today. Before we get into, how to write an effective cover letter, I think it's important to talk about how this will actually increase the number of positive responses to our job applications. Let's say we've submitted our job application online somewhere. That application, flies off into the ether until it lands on a pile of applications from other candidates for that same position. A recruiting team then, picks up your application, scans through it to extract, all the information they can to see if they should give you an interview. In a standard application, that's essentially your resume, but that leaves a major part of the job application puzzle out, and that's who you are. Look, when a company has a job posting out there, yes, they are looking for someone who can fulfill some of the requirements and skills that are listed on the job posting. At the end of the day, any job is an exchange of money for services to be rendered that the company needs. That being said, those skills are tied to you, a human. And a huge, huge part of working is this human element. You have to work with other people, and other people have to work with you. It's a non-negotiable. Someone could be the most technically skilled person in the world, but at the end of the day, if they can't work with people, then they're not the right person for the job, and they're not the person who's going to get hired. You've probably heard people say that relationships and connections are everything, and that it's so much easier to get a job when you have the right connections. That's definitely true, and it's a bit of an unfair advantage. But why is that the case? Like, why does that connection help you land a job? And it boils down to one simple concept: there are less unknowns. Maybe that connection has worked with you in a similar capacity. Maybe they personally haven't worked with you, but people they trust have. Maybe they don't know you all that well, but they know that you're great at conducting conversations. Maybe they know how passionate you are about the space that the company is in. What if, you had the chance to clear up some of those unknowns, to sort of build those relationships and connections through your job application? What if something in your application made the reader go, you know what? I'd root for this person. I can really see them making a positive effect on the company. At the end of the day, it's a judgment call on the recruiters or the hiring manager's end for them to decide whether they want to interview you. If you had the opportunity to show that person how awesome you are, would you throw that opportunity away? I recognize, it sounds like a no-brainer when it's put that way, and that's because it is. Frankly, everyone should be doing this, and by doing so yourself, you put yourself at a distinct advantage compared to all the other applicants out there. Now, I realize a common concern with cover letters is that no one's going to read it. And to be fair, I can't actually guarantee that someone will read it on the other end. That being said, I think there are a couple of factors to consider here. One is that on the job posting, they're quite literally giving you the option to add one. I've even seen places not have that option, but instead have a required question that says, why do you want to work here? Second is that the sort of importance of a cover letter and the likelihood that it actually gets read are inversely proportional to the size of the company. For a large company with thousands or even tens of thousands of people, yeah, you are sort of just one of many, and the effect you can have on that company is going to be limited. For a small company, on the other hand, the effect you can have is absolutely massive. If the company is under 100 people, you honestly may even be on a first-name basis with the CEO. Each hire at a small company has the potential to make or break the company, and so each candidate is taken very seriously. That isn't to say they aren't taken seriously at big companies, but at a small company, it becomes even more important. That cover letter gives so much valuable information to the person on the other side who is evaluating, and that's going to help them make a decision of whether or not to start interviewing. Cool, so that's some of the reasoning around why. Now let's get into some of the details around what makes a modern day software engineering cover letter good. The two pieces of information that you should be trying to convey are, one, how your background and skill set align with the role, and two, why you personally care about the company's mission. Let's talk about the first one a little bit. This is especially important if there's maybe a slight mismatch between your background and the role. Maybe that's, the expected number of years of experience. Let's say, the position asks for 2 and you only have 1. Maybe that's a difference in technologies or frameworks. Let's say the company asks for someone who is familiar in Angular, but instead all you know is React. If I'm tackling, number of years of experience, I could say, hey, look, I have only 1 year of experience, but, I had a starter project. I kicked that out of the park. And then with the subsequent project that I had, with larger scope, I did that well as well. Establishing a clear trajectory for the reader to see. For technologies, I could mention that, although my background is in React, I'm generally comfortable with reactive technologies and paradigms. And so whether we're working in React or Angular or anything else, I'm mostly just comfortable with modern day web development. And I'm excited to use whatever tool is required to help, solve the task at hand. I'm not particularly tied to one technology or the other. Now, let's go to the second one. I'd argue this is where you can make sort of the biggest difference for your application. Yes, if you're sort of completely unqualified, let's say you're fresh out of college and you're applying for a management position, this, part of the cover letter won't quite help you make up for that lack of qualification. However, if you're a bit more borderline, this can really make a difference. Let's give an example here. Let's say you're applying to a company that makes sensors that you can attach to your belongings, and then you can, find those sensors using a smartphone app when you can't find your belongings. Something, sort of easy to say here is, I really believe what you all are doing with these sensors. I misplace my keys every day without fail. And, my roommate now regularly expects me at 8 a.m. to be asking for help, as I'm sort of stumbling out the door. With that statement, you've shown a personal connection to the company. The company can see you as a real person, rushing out that door, and they can see you, truly using this product. You don't, necessarily have to be that person who needs that product. Maybe it applies to your friends or family instead. But, it shows an understanding of the space that the company is in. And, every company is going to want people who are invested in what the company is working on and are motivated to make it better. An extra bonus here is, let's say you applied to something that was sort of a bit out of your reach, but the recruiter still sees some potential from you through your letter. They, might refer you to another position that was open and maybe you missed it, or to a position that is not open yet, but is just about to be open very soon. Then you're still well on your way. One final question that might be on your mind: how long should this letter be? And honestly, it doesn't have to be that long. It could be even just 3 sentences. Really, whatever amount of space you need to convey those 2 points, that's all you need. If you think, writing a full page is helpful for you, by all means go for it, but there isn't like a strict minimum requirement here, as long as you can convey useful information. That's it. I recognize that this is, a hard and stressful time for a lot of people, but hopefully some of this information was useful, and hopefully some of it is able to help improve your job application process. As always, feel free to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. See y'all later.